In a New York Times interview, U.S. President Barack Obama reportedly chuckled over the prospect of employment created by Keystone Pipeline. Well, my next guest probably has a thing or two to say about that. Ezra Levant finds it hard to find humor, I would guess.
Well, look, I mean, the United States has an unemployment problem. In fact, to this day, unemployment has not returned to pre-recession levels. It's still high. And that's just people who are bothering to look for work. Millions of Americans have just dropped out of the labor force altogether, which means they've absolutely given up at finding a job. That's terrifying.
If his numbers are correct, the president said it's a couple of thousand jobs and 100 permanent jobs in a country of 150 million.
Yeah.
But his numbers aren't right either.
Well, I mean, listen, it's a $7.6 billion infrastructure project. So common sense tells us that's a lot of jobs. Now, the U.S. State Department has studied this pipeline probably more than any piece of metal has been studied since the moon rock. I mean, they've issued two huge reports. The first was 10,000 pages, and the next was 2,000 pages. So 12,000 pages of research. You can find it all online. I did. I went there. And according to the U.S. State Department, that's Obama's own administration, this pipeline will create 42,000 jobs during the construction phase. That's everything from steel to the actual guys welding it to the trucks to even hotels and restaurants and accountants. Now, obviously, when you're done building the pipeline, those 42,000 jobs, most of them are not required. It's like when you're done having your house built, the carpenter doesn't stick around. But this pipeline will have, let's call it a couple hundred permanent jobs. Well, hey, you know what? Obama should not be laughing at a single job because he hasn't exactly been stellar at creating any of them. And it's very weird to me to hear the President of the United States, who is presiding over the weakest economy since Jimmy Carter, laughing at a prospect of thousands, even if it was the 2,000 jobs. Trans-Canada Pipeline said it'll be 20,000 jobs. Obama said 2,000. The State Department says 41,000. I don't care who's right. Why would you laugh at any jobs?
Yeah, and once it's built, it provides cheap energy to the United States, cheaper energy to the United States, and I mean, that's going to create jobs as well. We haven't even looked at that side of the argument.
Let's talk about the taxes. This pipeline, as it crosses its way across America, will be the #1 property taxpayer in many of the counties through which it passes. I mean, once a pipe's in the ground, it pays taxes like any other privately owned right-of-way would, a utility. And again, listening to Obama's interview, the audio was posted by the New York Times. He laughed at the project, and he implied that, well, we won't do this if it's not in our environmental interest, as if, and he talked about carbon dioxide, as if this pipeline would cause Americans to drive more, fly more, heat their homes more. But that's a weird misunderstanding of what this pipeline will do. This pipeline will not, there's not millions of Americans just waiting to drive, and they're not going to drive until this pipeline comes. They're driving all the time. Every single day, Pat, America burns about 19 million barrels worth of petroleum products. The thing is, they're just getting it from different sources. So Obama, by delaying, is not stopping the burning of carbon dioxide. He's not stopping the use of oil. He's making a preference, a choice. He is choosing conflict oil from Venezuela. We've talked about this before. Venezuela, every single day, sells 800,000 barrels of oil to the United States, right into that Texas Gulf Coast. It's heavy oil, very carboniferous, and it goes into those refineries. Well, guess what? The Keystone XL pipeline has 830,000 barrels, almost exactly the same number. That Keystone XL pipeline would perfectly displace conflict oil from a belligerent authoritarian regime that's very anti-American, that bullies its neighbors in South America. So Obama is not stopped. Like I listened to the full interview, and it was like he said, well, I don't know about all that carbon. You're buying carbon right now for Venezuela. Human life is a carbon-based life form. I mean, what carbon? It sounds like it's some, scary chemical. We're made of carbon.
But he's pandering to the economists, or not economists, the environmentalists overall. Because remember, the original argument was because it went through a part of Nebraska that was environmentally sensitive. Well, they rerouted it.
Yeah, and in fact, in Nebraska, both the Democrats and the Republicans and the labor. I talked to the Teamsters boss down there in Nebraska. They want this thing desperately. That's the fracture in the Democratic Party. You've got the eco elite. They're really elitists. I mean, they're big foundation money like the Rockefeller Brothers Foundation, the Tides Foundation, fancy celebrities like Josh Fox and Daryl Hannah. I mean, and they donate a lot of money. I mean, they have big parties in Malibu and Hollywood. That's part of the Democratic base, but what about the working men, the blue-collar guys, the hard hat guys, the guys who like to weld and build and drive and schlep and build America? They are being shut out. It's very strange to me to see the AFL-CIO, the Teamsters, and the construction trades saying, Obama, what the hell, we supported you. We're not even asking for a grant or a concession or a subsidy like all your green schemes like Solyndra, $500 million down that. We're not asking for the Chevy Volt bailout. Can you just let us take this private money from a Canadian company, and whether it's one job or 40,000, what skin is it off your nose?
Yeah, good point, Ezra. You going to talk about that tonight?
Well, I ranted about it. I've got about 2 or 3 hours left in this rant, Pat. So we'll have about 7 or 8 shows to get it all out.
Too, right? Thanks a lot, Ezra,
nice
for coming in too. Ezra's the host of The Source, so make sure you watch that one overall.